You've come here with the club 19th in the First Division.
We need to look at the facts themselves. We haven't won the league for 20 years, right? That is a great challenge for the Manchester United players, and will be until it's achieved.
In my first 3 games in charge, I said to you, the storm is coming. Today, after this disaster season, I want to tell you the good days are coming.
Rúben Amorim, Sir Alex Ferguson, 2 names, 2 eras, but one undeniable truth. Breaking a duopoly doesn't happen by accident. In 1980, Ferguson did the unthinkable at Aberdeen, ending 15 years of Celtic and Rangers dominance in Scottish football. In 2021, Amorim shattered an 18-year drought at Sporting CP, dethroning Benfica and Porto's grip on Portuguese football. But here's where it gets interesting. Fast forward to today, and Amorim has taken over the same club Ferguson once transformed into a dynasty, Manchester United, a club that cycled through manager after manager since Ferguson left in 2013, each one failing to recapture that magic. Until now, after a disastrous 15th place finish last season, United have gone 5 games unbeaten for the first time since February 2024. They've beaten Liverpool at Anfield. They've completely reinvented their style of play with 23.2 long passes per 90 minutes, the highest in the Premier League. And Amorim, he's doing it his way, with a 3-4-3 formation everyone said wouldn't work, and a philosophy that sounds remarkably like the one Ferguson built his legacy on.
At some stage, you're going to have to accept that the way you set up your team is just not working, and people are finding it easy to play against you.
A lot of things that you have no idea what happened during these months, but I'm not going to change. When I want to change my philosophy, I will change. If not, you have to change the man.
So the question isn't whether Amorim can be the next Ferguson. The question is, has he already started walking the same path? This is why Rúben Amorim is the closest manager to Ferguson since 1986. 1978, a 36-year-old Alex Ferguson walks into Aberdeen Football Club with 0 First Division experience and a burning desire to prove himself. 4 years removed from his playing career, he watched his first away game end in a 5-2 thrashing, and in that moment, something clicked. Ferguson realized that talent alone wasn't enough. He needed warriors. He needed a mentality that refused to accept second place. For 15 years, Scottish football had been a 2-horse race: Celtic and Rangers, Rangers and Celtic. The Old Firm Derby wasn't just a rivalry, it was a monopoly. But in 1980, Ferguson's Aberdeen did something extraordinary. They won the league title. They didn't just break the duopoly, they shattered it. And 3 years later, they went even further, beating Real Madrid in the 1983 Cup Winners' Cup final. Aberdeen, a club from the northeast of Scotland, defeating Real Madrid in a European final. Now let's jump forward 40 years. Portugal 2020, a 35-year-old Rúben Amorim takes over at Sporting CP, a club that hadn't won the league in 18 years. 18 years of watching Benfica and Porto trade titles back and forth like a private tennis match. Sporting weren't just struggling, they were irrelevant. But Amorim had a vision, a 3-4-3 system built on discipline, collective effort, and an unshakable belief in his methods. And just like Ferguson before him, he didn't just talk about winning, he demanded it. 2021, Sporting CP lift the Primera Liga trophy. The drought is over. Amorim had done what many thought impossible. He broke the duopoly, not with the biggest budget, not with the most famous players, but with organization, intensity, and a culture that simply refused to lose. Sound familiar? Here's the thing. Breaking a duopoly isn't about having better players. It's about having better belief. Ferguson proved it at Aberdeen. Amorim proved it at Sporting. And now, both men face the same crossroads. Stay at the club where you're a hero, or take on the ultimate challenge. For Ferguson in 1986, that challenge was Manchester United, a club that hadn't won the league in 20 years. For Amorim in 2024, it was the same club, now 11 years without a league title and coming off their worst season in Premier League history. 2 managers, 2 duopolies destroyed, and 2 impossible jobs at the same club, separated by 38 years. The parallel is almost too perfect, but the real question isn't about what they've done, it's about how they did it, and that's where this story gets even more interesting. When Ferguson arrived at Manchester United in 1986, English football had a certain way of doing things. The long ball game, physical, direct, get it forward quickly. But Ferguson had his own ideas. He wanted control, he wanted patterns, he wanted a system that could adapt without losing its identity. And most importantly, he wanted players who understood that the system came first, egos came second. It took 6 years. 6 years of fans calling for his head, 6 years of patience from the board. But when it clicked, it was unstoppable. 3 Premier League titles in 4 years. The class of '92 breaking through. And through it all, Ferguson's philosophy remained constant. The team is greater than any individual. The system survives beyond the stars. Now watch what Amorim is doing at United, and you'll see the same stubborn conviction. When he arrived in November 2024, everyone had an opinion. The 3-4-3 won't work in the Premier League. He needs to adapt to English football. He should switch to a back four. But Amorim didn't blink, not for a second. Here's what the critics missed. Amorim's system isn't just about the formation on paper. It's about the principles underneath. High pressing with intensity, players who are comfortable under pressure, thriving in tight spaces, center backs who can play line-breaking passes into the double pivot, wing backs who can transform from defenders to attackers in a heartbeat. And when central progression becomes difficult, switch it. Wide, fast, direct. Last season, Manchester United attempted to play out from the back with players who couldn't execute under pressure. The result, 5.4 turnovers in the defensive third per game. They were giving the ball away on their own doorstep, inviting chaos. This season, under Amorim's system, that number has dropped to 2.4. How? By being more direct. By playing 23.2 long passes from the goalkeeper per 90 minutes. The highest in the Premier League. That's a 76% increase from last season. But here's the crucial part. These aren't aimless hoofs upfield. Against Liverpool, goalkeeper Sané Lamens launched 45 long balls. Only 8 were completed successfully, but United didn't need them to be. The system accounted for the second ball, forced Virgil van Dijk into a header, win the second ball with Bruno Fernandes and Matheus Cunha's tireless running, switch it wide to Amad Diallo or Bryan Mbeumo to progress. Only 30% of United's touches this season have occurred deep in their own territory. For context, only Arsenal have had fewer touches in their defensive third after 10 games. This is deliberate, this is designed, and it's working. United are now the 8th fastest attacking team in the league, up from 5th slowest last season. They've attempted the 3rd most long balls in the Premier League, and they've completed more switches of play than any other team. But the system only works if you have the right personnel, and this is where Amorim learned directly from Ferguson's playbook. You can have the best tactical plan in the world, but if your players don't fit, you're building a house on sand. Last season, Amorim tried to implement his system with Rasmus Højlund, Alejandro Garnacho, and Marcus Rashford. It was like trying to conduct an orchestra where half the musicians were playing a different song. Rashford and Garnacho in particular seem to operate on a completely different wavelength. Individual brilliance, sure, but collective cohesion, non-existent. This summer, United signed Bryan Mbeumo, Matheus Cunha, and Benjamin Sesko. 3 forwards who actually follow tactical instructions. 3 players who understand that in Amorim's system, the space you create for your teammate is just as valuable as the goal you score. And suddenly, the system doesn't look so rigid anymore. It looks fluid, dangerous, alive. Take the double pivot. Everyone questioned why Amorim keeps starting Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro together. They're too slow. They get overrun, but Amorim isn't playing them for their legs. He's playing them for their passing range. Those long diagonal balls that switch play in an instant. That precision under pressure. Could Kobbie Mainoo or Manuel Ugarte offer more mobility? Absolutely, but they don't have the same passing quality Amorim's system demands from that position. And here's where the preseason matters. For the first time under Amorim, United completed a full preseason training camp. With no European fixtures this season, they've had additional training sessions to drill the system into muscle memory. Every rotation, every trigger. Amad covering at right wing back when Mbeumo drives forward. Dorgu stepping in as left center back when Luke Shaw pushes up. This level of coordination doesn't happen overnight. Ferguson understood this too. His 4-4-2 wasn't revolutionary, but the way his players executed it with that relentless hunger and collective understanding made it unstoppable. Amorim's 3-4-3 works the same way. It's not the formation that makes it special, it's the conviction behind it, the refusal to compromise, the belief that if everyone buys in, the system will deliver. And just like Ferguson, Amorim has shown he's not afraid to make big personnel calls. dropping Benjamin Sesko and Lenny Yoro against Liverpool to play Harry Maguire in a false 9. It's the same ruthless pragmatism Ferguson showed when he dropped David Beckham or sold Job Stam. The system comes first, always. So when people say Amorim needs to adapt, they're missing the point entirely. Ferguson didn't adapt to English football. He forced English football to adapt to him. And Amorim, he's doing exactly the same thing. The system is non-negotiable, and if you can't fit into it, you won't play. Simple as that. Fear, loyalty, respect. For 27 years at Manchester United, Sir Alex Ferguson mastered the delicate balance between all three. Ask any player who worked under him, and you'll hear the same contradictions. Terrifying but caring, ruthless but protective, a disciplinarian who treated you like family. But here's what people always miss about Ferguson. The fear wasn't random. It wasn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was calculated, strategic. Ferguson understood something fundamental about human psychology. Different players need different treatment. Eric Cantona never got the hairdryer. Never. Why? Because Ferguson knew that public criticism would destroy him. Cantona needed protection, an arm around the shoulder, someone to stand by him when the world turned against him. But Roy Keane got the full force of Ferguson's wrath when he stepped out of line. Different player, different approach. And when Keane criticized his teammates publicly on MUTV, Ferguson didn't hesitate. He was gone. Captain or not, nobody was bigger than the team. David Beckham learned the same lesson when his celebrity lifestyle began overshadowing his football. When he started answering back, Ferguson made his position clear. A boot to the face might have been an accident, but the message wasn't. And by 2003, Beckham was on his way to Real Madrid. Ferguson later admitted it simply. He fell in love with Victoria. That changed everything. I had to think about my own control of the club. This wasn't a manager losing control. This was a manager refusing to lose control. And there's a massive difference. Ferguson's United had a culture, a standard, a way of doing things. If you bought into it, he'd go to war for you. If you didn't, it didn't matter if you were the biggest star in the world. You were out. Now look at Rúben Amorim. Same conviction, same clarity, same willingness to make the hard calls. That quote right there tells you everything. Amorim protects his players publicly, just like Ferguson did. But behind closed doors, he demands standards. At Sporting CP, there were stories of brutal training sessions, of players being called out for half-hearted pressing, of tactical meetings that felt more like interrogations. But those same players would run through walls for him. Why? Because he was consistent, fair but uncompromising. And at Manchester United, we're already seeing it. When the team went 5 games unbeaten, Amorim didn't celebrate excessively. When they struggled, he didn't panic. He treats his players like adults, not children who need constant reassurance. But adult treatment comes with adult expectations. Ferguson had a saying, "I communicate with my staff and players. Recognition of value. They'll pay you back." Amorim operates the same way. Praise in public, criticize in private. But when standards slip, there are consequences. Just like Ferguson benched Ruud van Nistelrooy for the 2006 Champions League final, Amorim dropped Benjamin Sesko against Liverpool despite his aerial ability being seemingly perfect for the game plan. Why? Because tactically, a false 9 made more sense. The decision, not the player's ego, came first. Here's what separates managers like Ferguson and Amorim. They understand that player management isn't about being liked, it's about being respected. Ferguson's players didn't always like him in the moment. Ask them about the hairdryer treatment, and they'll tell you it was terrifying. But ask them now, years later, and they'll tell you it made them better. It pushed them to levels they didn't know they had. Amorim has that same quality. His players at Sporting talked about his intensity, his impossibly high standards, his refusal to accept mediocrity, but they also talked about his loyalty. When a player was struggling, Amorim would sit with them, break down the game, explain exactly what he needed. Not screaming, not humiliating, just clear, direct communication. And this brings us to one of the most underrated aspects of both managers. They knew when to use the stick and when to use the carrot. Ferguson's famous squeaky bum time comment before a crucial run-in wasn't just humor, it was psychological warfare. He was easing the pressure on his players while putting it on his opponents. Amorim does the same thing. Watch his press conferences. He deflects criticism from his players, takes responsibility for defeats, admits, but never makes excuses. The modern player is different from the player of Ferguson's era. They're wealthier, more powerful, more connected to social media and public opinion, but the fundamentals of management haven't changed. Players still want clarity, they still want honesty, they still want a manager who will protect them when the world is watching, but will challenge them when the doors are closed. Ferguson once said, he knew every player, he knew the ins and outs of every player, he knew the way to speak to the player, how to get a reaction from them. That's not just management, that's mastery. And when you watch Amorim rotate his squad, when you see him make ruthless tactical substitutions, when you hear him speak about player mentality, you see the same mastery developing, the iron fist and the velvet glove, discipline wrapped in loyalty, standards enforced through respect. Ferguson perfected it over 27 years. Amorim is building it right now, one decision at a time. And just like Ferguson, he understands the most important rule. The moment you compromise your standards for one player, you lose the entire dressing room. So you don't compromise, ever. Amorim would say exactly the same thing, because when you're building something that lasts, when you're trying to create a dynasty, being liked is optional. Being respected is essential. And both Ferguson and Amorim understood that the only way to earn that respect is to demand it, protect it, and never ever let your standards slip. Not for anyone. February 17th, 2024. Manchester United sit 15th in the Premier League table. The worst season in the club's history is unfolding in real time. Old Trafford, once a fortress, has become a graveyard for reputations. Fans are demanding change. The media is writing obituaries. Fast forward to today. 5 games unbeaten, first time since February 2024. A 2-1 victory at Anfield, ending Liverpool's perfect home record. 12 goals scored in that unbeaten run. A comeback against Forest and Spurs. A screamer from Amad Diallo against Forest, and suddenly the narrative has shifted. The stats tell the story even clearer. United have reduced turnovers in their defensive third from 5.4 per game to 2.4. They've gone from the 5th slowest attack in the league to the 8th fastest. They're attempting 23.2 long passes from the goalkeeper per 90 minutes, 76% more than last season. They lead the Premier League in switches of play, and defensively, they've shifted from a vulnerable 4-2-3-1 to a compact 5-4-1 out of possession that actually protects the midfield. But here's what the numbers don't show: the belief, the identity, the sense that this team finally knows what it's trying to be. When Matthijs de Ligt scored that header against Spurs to keep the unbeaten run alive, you could see it in the celebration. This is a team playing for each other. Ferguson took 6 years to win his first league trophy at United. 6 years of doubt, criticism, and calls for his head, but the board trusted the process. They saw the culture being built. They watched Aberdeen's duopoly breaker slowly transform a club that had forgotten how to win. And in 1990, the FA Cup. In 1993, the Premier League. In 99, the treble. Amorim is 7 months into his Manchester United journey. 7 months of implementing a system everyone said wouldn't work. 7 months of making ruthless decisions, protecting his players publicly and demanding standards privately. 7 months of building something that, if you look closely, feels strangely familiar. He broke an 18-year duopoly at Sporting. Ferguson broke a 15-year duopoly at Aberdeen. He's installing a non-negotiable system at United. Ferguson did the same. He's ruthlessly pragmatic with personnel. Ferguson was identical. He protects his players but demands excellence. Ferguson's blueprint, word for word. I want to tell you, the good days are coming. When Ferguson said goodbye to United in 2013, after 49 trophies in 27 years, he left behind an impossible standard. Every manager since has been measured against him and found wanting. Moyes, Van Gaal, Mourinho, Solskjaer, Rangnick, Ten Hag, all failed. Not because they weren't good managers, but because they weren't Ferguson. But maybe, just maybe, the question was always wrong. Maybe United didn't need another Ferguson. Maybe they needed someone who understood what made Ferguson special in the first place. The culture, the discipline, the unwavering belief in a system, the ability to break a duopoly and then build a dynasty. Rúben Amorim won't be the next Sir Alex Ferguson. Nobody will. But 5 games unbeaten, 12 goals scored, a win at Anfield, and a team that finally looks like it knows itself. That's not hype. That's not hope. That's evidence. Amorim won't either. And if the trajectory continues, if the culture solidifies, if the good days really are coming, then 38 years after Ferguson walked into Old Trafford with a reputation for the impossible, history might just be repeating itself. This is why Rúben Amorim is the closest manager to Ferguson since 1986.